So this one up here is a thin crust. How many of you are from the Northeast? Any of you from New York? Okay. It's possible that if you're from New York, you would say that this thin crust is the best pizza, right? How many of you are from Chicago, or the Midwest? You would be back there. Would you agree that the thin crust is the best pizza? Or the Chicago style? You say yes, it's still the best, even though you're from Illinois. So we each have a different perspective on things. But if we were going to say, okay, I want to go get the best pizza, my point of this is we'd have to decide, well, what are the attributes of the best pizza? If you like thin crust, you might say New York is the best place to get pizza. If you like thicker crust, you might say Chicago. Or you might, if you like crab and Chardonnay, which is what we have on our pizza in California. We love crab. We have crab for Thanksgiving, right? Because that's when the crab season is in Northern California. So we have crab, everything. So we might have a different perspective on what the best pizza is. So that's if we're going to go there, then we could say there's a physical position. That if we're going to get the best pizza, and we decide that the New York style pizza is the best pizza, then we're going to go to New York, right? So we would know where we need to be in. So that's a position, right? We could get out our GPS, we could figure out how we're going to get to New York, which place in New York, we could Google it, we could do all kinds of things. And then that'd be the strategy, understanding where we're going to go, and then we could do the tactics of getting on the airplane, getting the cab, whatever. We could get ourselves to that physical position. And so when we talk about positioning, often people sort of relate to a physical positioning. But when we're talking about marketing, we're not really talking about physical positioning. Instead, we're talking about positioning as it relates to inside the customer's mind. Positioning is therefore the actions that we might take to create a mental image in the customer's mind that becomes a shorthand for what we represent to them. To illustrate this, what does this symbol mean?
Quality.
Quality. Anybody else? Performance. Leadership. Leadership. Class. Expensive. Luxury. Okay? So we all associate this symbol with something. This comes off the spreader ambulance, by the way. It's a Mercedes symbol for. If there's anybody here who doesn't have to see it, there might not be customers for that, and it would destroy my brand, right? Because the customer would now go, I don't know what that means anymore, because it doesn't mean the same thing, right? Their mental model has changed. What if I said, and it's cheap? Well, no, I've got a great toaster. It's a fantastic high-performance toaster. Well, what if I said, okay, I'm going to create a fantastic high-performance motorcycle? Maybe, right? So it's closer. So the point I'm trying to make is, this is your brand. It's not the name Mercedes. It's really not the symbol. It's what it means inside the head of the customer. And all of you went, yeah, I couldn't see a toaster. I wouldn't buy a Mercedes toaster if I would buy a Mercedes car, but a Mercedes motorcycle, even though that's not as far off track, because the brand means something to you. It's a shorthand of a mental model. And so if we're going to get into marketing communications, then what we want to do is understand, well, what do I want them to think of me? I have to understand that first. Just like if I want to get the best New York pizza, I have to know that it's in New York, not Chicago. I have to go to the right place, or else it's not going to happen, and it's a mental model. And so then everything has to match that. Because if I started producing toasters with this, I'm communicating a mixed message, and the customer can no longer understand, and I'm actually fighting against my brand. Okay? So that's how you can position for brands. Now here's a sort of a quick little format you can think through how to create one of these if you're creating a strategic plan or a marketing aspect of a strategic plan. It's a positioning statement. And so you can sort of fill in the yellow. And so what this does is, this doesn't become a slogan, this becomes a way of thinking through, well, who am I and how do I fit? Two, and who is the target? The target is the specific kind of audience that I'm going for. It's the person who would buy the high-end toaster, right? That there's a particular demographic group, that's what I was going to try to market. Or let's take a Mercedes motorcycle, as that example. So I'm looking for people who would buy a Mercedes motorcycle. So what might that be? Rich, action-oriented. Who might I be if I were going to buy a Mercedes motorcycle? Just to illustrate this target. No one? Have you seen BMW motorcycles? Pretty luxurious. Older, wealthy, educated, probably has a Mercedes already, and has a motorcycle or wants a motorcycle. So we might be able to go through and define the demographics of who that might be. We could then go research and figure out what zip codes they are. And so we could identify two, the rich Mercedes owners who might want a motorcycle. Right? So we're not building a slogan here. It doesn't have to flow smoothly. It's a way of thinking. X, Mercedes, is the brand of what? Frame of reference. The point there is every product that you offer to the marketplace, they have to have a frame of reference. They have to be able to understand what it is. It could be a better motorcycle. It could be a better phone. It could be a better something else, but it's got to be a something. It's got to be a frame of reference. I mentioned Steve Jobs. You can tell I'm a Steve Jobs fan. He did a fantastic job when he did the iPhone, because what he did is he showed three logos. If you saw his presentation, he put up a little logo of a phone, put up a logo of a camera, I think it was, and a third logo, and he kept going back and forth. And so you got it, okay, we're talking about a phone, we're talking about a camera, and we're talking about a music player, I think is what it was. And then eventually, after he showed those logos several times, he put all three of them together, and he showed the iPhone. And so we all go, okay, it's a phone, it's a camera, and it's a music player, all in one. Now, if he had come out and said it's a new electronic device, we wouldn't have understood it. We understood that it's a better phone. So it has to be a frame of reference. A perfect example of this is TiVo. How many of you have TiVo? A few people. I don't mean a DVR, I mean specifically TiVo. No one has that, right? Weren't they the first? Why don't you have TiVo? Now, how many of you have DVR or some form? Almost all of us do, right? So why do you not have the industry leader, the first people out with that technology? Was that?
A better device now.
It's a better device. That could be, but even at the time they did it, one of the things that TiVo did is they didn't explain their product very well in their early ads. They didn't provide a frame of reference. They drew the analogy of a tapeless VCR. And so, well, what is that? I don't understand what that is, a tapeless VCR. And then one of the other, I can't remember which it was, DVR manufacturers came out and said, you can record all your shows and watch them anytime. Oh, now I get it. This is an ability to change time and see what I want. It's not a tapeless VCR, it's watching shows. Point being, you have to define what this frame of reference is, because the customer, to understand your product or your company, is going to relate it to something else. Right? That first. That primary benefit. So what that means is we talked before about if there isn't a benefit, I'm not willing to pay, and I've got to see that that supplier is unique. So what's the benefit to the customer? What are they going to get that is their primary benefit from this particular product? What is it that makes this thing unique? How are they going to get advantage?